Hello and welcome back to my channel where we discuss everything sexuality and occupational therapy related. In today's lesson, we'll be talking about how to tackle those uncomfortable conversations. What I gather is a lot of healthcare professionals have a hard time initiating conversations about sex and intimacy, which makes sense considering such a delicate topic. So today we're going to go some ways that can possibly make it a little bit easier on you on how to tackle and have these tough conversations with these clients. So these are just a list of ways on how we can initiate conversations. Remember, this is a delicate subject. However, initiate these conversations early. I feel like opening up a door for them to talk to, it's a pretty great start. In your evaluation, if you bring up this question, it kind of lets them know, hey, this is something that we can address if needed to. And that gives them a little bit of ease, and then you have time to prepare as well. So let's start with the very first one. Assess your own comfort. By discussing sex with the various patients and patient groups, you begin to identify your own biases. And from there, you can realize if you feel uncomfortable having this conversation about sex, sexuality, intimacy, your patients will too. The very second thing is to avoid assumptions. Avoid making assumptions about your patient based on their age, appearance, marital status, or any other factor. Also, don't assume that they are not ready to talk about this. I feel like that is one of the biggest things that as healthcare professionals, or like a mistake that we make, is to assume that, oh, they don't want to talk about it. Oh, no, they should focus on other rehab stuff. Oh, this is something they probably feel uncomfortable. That is for them to decide. The third one is to gather your patient's basic information. Now, this consists of their names, their pronouns, their sexual orientation, their gender identity. With their gender identity, you can use a two-step method. What a two-step method is first you can ask for your sex assigned at birth, and then from there you can ask about their current gender identity. The fifth thing that you would like to address is using the correct pronouns and terminology. When they tell you their pronouns, whether it matches their gender identity or not, use those pronouns. It makes them feel a comfort. Another thing to take into consideration when addressing or bringing up this sexual concerns about sexuality is to always use neutral and inclusive terms like partner. You don't want to be talking to somebody and say, oh, your husband, and assume that they are with a male or they have a husband. It could be any gender they identify as. So using the term like partner is more of a safe zone and you're not making any assumptions. Overall, as mentioned, this is such a delicate topic, so try to really build rapport with your clients before trying to dig them with all these sensitive questions. Make them feel more comfortable. And if needed to, if they came in with their partners or relatives or caregivers, ask them to take a step outside the room so you can have this conversation with your client. I feel like the best way to really go about asking this question is to implement it into your evaluation. So it's like, it's like the dash when you're doing an ortho assessment and they have that one question, the dash saying, hey, do you have any difficulties like with participating in sex? So it's like just adding a symbol is like one question in there, one to two in there can really help. Like you're already identified, you're opening that doorway. And when bringing this up, I feel like personally I like to do in more casual conversation. I like to play more into my character. Build rapport with my client, and from there see it kind of engage that situation, see how they're like, assess how they're like, and then you can ask questions like, hey, do you have any questions about sex or intimacy? And if they say yes, be like, okay, yeah, let's talk about it. What's going on? What's happening? From there you can like ask like deeper questions about, for example, like what does the sex you're having look like and what do you find difficult about it? And then you can ask them like, oh, what does better look like for you? And that itself, when you're asking questions like, oh, what does it look like, what does better look like for you, that right there is like a goal. That's your goal. Like as a healthcare professional, your goal is to try to reach that, like they're better. Same thing with things like intimacy or emotional intimacy. Like, what does emotional intimacy look like for you? What's difficult about emotional intimacy? Intimacy. How can we make it better? What does better look like for you? So those are just some ways that you can ask those questions. I took a master class with Miss Catherine Ellis. Her master class was basically on sexuality and intimacy and how, as OTs, we can do better. And she actually gave us some great questions like to ask, and I just wanted to share some of that with you. So the first one being, many people with blank insert condition have questions about sex and intimacy. Do you? As occupational therapy clinicians, we address physical, cognitive, emotional aspects of engaging in meaningful activities. Engaging in sex and intimacy is often a meaningful activity for people. Do you have any questions? Another one could be, occupational therapy clinicians address sexuality and intimacy. Do you have any questions related to sexuality and intimacy? And if so, would you like to address them in our interventions? And the last one would be, or could be, occupational therapy clinicians address sexuality and intimacy. Just know this is an okay topic to talk about, and let me know if you have any questions. I feel like her masterclass and these questions that she gave was phenomenal. If you guys ever get the chance, I really encourage you guys to take it. It is free. Oh, her first class is free. It's amazing. And I feel like these are really great opener questions to initiate these conversations. When talking about sexuality, another thing, a major thing you should be asking these clients is if they're enjoying it. It may seem a little weird asking, hey, like, are you enjoying like sex? But that's actually a question you should be asking, because when we're assessing everything else, we're talking about more of the mechanical aspects of engaging in sex. And if you're not asked, you can be doing all of that, and if you're not enjoying it, then what's the point, right? Like, that is the important part of engaging in this occupation. Are you enjoying it? So make sure you ask your clients that. And if you feel like having these conversations or even initiating it is still of difficulty for you, I do have links to two assessments below on sexuality and like addressing sexuality and stuff. So if you just give them an assessment to do and like have them fill it out, so you don't really have to like initiate that conversation, and from that assessment you can figure out, hey, this is something they would like to talk about, or this is something they're having difficulty with, and then ask them like, hey, is this something you would like to talk about, because from your assessment I see this, this, and this. So that can also be another way for you to be addressing this. Overall, though, what I really encourage healthcare professionals to do is to always initiate these conversations. Initiate early on, so that way they have that time, they know that this is something they can talk about in later interventions or later treatment sessions. But really encourage you guys to get more educated on this, because I feel like the more educated you are on this topic, you would feel more competent talking about it and more confident talking about it.